I'm very excited about this, and I hope you are too. The tool I'm going to present to you today has helped me. It's one of my most important success formulas. And I want to share with you how it works and how you can shift any time out of a negative state into a positive state without using the old tools of suppression, of denial, because they don't really work. They just put you into a state of lower power levels, and from there, you're not very effective. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the tool, and then also we're going to practice it. I have prepared a little bit of an exercise where you can directly engage with the tool and see how it works on yourself. So this tool is for you, is for your team, it's for your career, and it works in the professional field as powerful as it does in the personal field. But you will see for yourself in a moment. So here are the key learnings. I'm sure you read it, and let's start. Let's start and dive right into it. Here you see the ladder of power. What I want to focus on at the moment is the horizontal line, what you see in the gray boxes in the middle of the page. Everything starts out as an idea, a thought, a feeling. Then we might experience a wish, a will, a desire to act on it. From there, we come maybe to a decision. Once we made a decision, then it's time to act, and then it's time to take responsibility. Now, from responsibility, you see that you can go up in the creation into the victor state, or you go down in the reaction, in the victim state. And before we're going to start with explaining the various dynamics and the various levels of the rungs, I want to just spend a moment on the word responsibility. Response, able, it is the ability to respond. I'm going to read it to you. It's so beautiful. The true meaning of responsibility is response able, or the ability to respond. Whatever you may think, say, do, or feel, these are our responses for which we, and no one else, are responsible. This is easy to see, but hard to live, for we have been taught to believe and think the opposite. So we don't consciously choose our response. We react instead. And then we blame others for our reaction. Consequently, we often feel imprisoned by others and or our circumstances. I guess everybody can relate to that. Sounds familiar, I believe. So true leaders, on the other hand, have broken the spell. They see the illusion. They take full responsibility for their response abilities, and as a consequence, they always hold their own destiny in their hands. And I believe that's what we all want. Now, let's take a look at what happens when we do not respond, when we go into an automatic reaction. So I first want to explain to you what happens when we do not act on the creation side of things. And it will become clear as I will explain it to you. So we focus now on the red lower rungs as they are presented here on the screen. The first thing is expectation and assumption. So the moment we are going into action and do not act, or have an expectation that others are doing what we assume they should do, and here we go already into big trouble, right? Everybody in business, everybody in action knows that assumptions are the mothers of, I can't say the word here on the webinar, but you probably know how the saying goes. So, for example, assuming a salary raise and not really expressing a wish or a request, as you can see on the upper side of the ladder of power, just assuming it, expecting it, and also, for example, to receive an acknowledgement, to get promoted, or that things are getting done. The moment we are in an expectation, we hand ourselves over on a silver platter to a downspin that happens automatically, that happens even inevitably. after a while, when you don't act on expectation or assumption, when you just let it be there, then it becomes a complaint. It transmutes into a complaint. Then suddenly the complaint is taking over and becomes our state. Yeah? So they are unreliable as a complaint. They didn't listen. Oh, it's too much work. I'm underpaid. They don't look after me. He should put the toilet seat down. She should dress up Saturday Eve. I should get paid more. God should help me. My children don't listen. Life isn't fair. Just the complaints itself, they are lined up there. And if we don't act then, if we allow the complaint to be there, so we are in that silent mode, most of us sometimes even have difficulties to identify their complaints. Why? Because they are suppressed by habit. They are in denial. So sometimes it's even quite painful to admit to oneself that one sits on complaints. But if I get that, then I can make a difference. If I don't get that, then the complaint falls further down to the next lower rung, which is frustration or aggression. Now in frustration, we are tending to go into resistance to our goal, into resistance to people, into resistance to all, basically everything what we blame is responsible for the condition we find ourselves in. We are starting to withhold. It's kind of a unconscious vengeance. Frustration already psychologically and emotionally is a state of pain. And because we're experiencing pain, being frustrated, we feel we have now the entitlement to get even with the causes that we assign to our frustration, so people, circumstances. And then we are going to withhold our engagement. The silent treatment in a relationship, or simply in the job, only doing what is absolutely required in order to not get fired, or just making the shareholders happy on a normal level, not going the extra mile anymore, not really thinking out of the box. That happens when we are on the level of frustration. We also start making people wrong. We find somebody to blame, and also some of us are unconsciously attracting illnesses. We get sick, and that's not really happening normally when you're fired up in a state of creation. Miraculously, when you're on the upper side of the ladder of power, you are very, very much in a good health. So this is all what can happen when you're in frustration. And next to it is aggression. So in aggression, we use force. There's a great saying, by the way, those who don't have power use force. Do you hear that? Those who don't have power use force. And I know you do have power, but sometimes we lose it, and especially when we are in those red lower rungs, we lose at least a little bit of power. And then we start to manipulate our environment. We start to manipulate people, etc., in order to still get the job done. And then we get edgy, grumpy sometimes, and we use force. We also may start unintendedly sabotaging. We do things that hurt the team energy, that hurt the company, or isn't really healthy, isn't really good. We attract mistakes as well. So maybe you believe in the law of attraction, or you have examined life and you see that our internal states have something to do with what we attract or how things around us happen. There are people who are in wonderful flow, or at times are in flow, and that means the internal state allows for flow. They attract good stuff. They attract positive coincidences. And then there are other days where the opposite happens. We get up in the morning, we hit our elbow, we hurt ourselves, we are in emotional edgy state, we drink maybe too much coffee, etc., etc. The traffic is horrible, and so it goes on through the whole day, and that means we are on a low vibration level with our energy. I don't know if you believe in that or not, but there is a lot of evidence nowadays, also from a science point of view, that we are connected to the environment. So who we are internally has something directly to do with the behavior of our three-dimensional reality. To consider that puts you immediately back into a powerful position to take a look inside rather than further blaming the outside, blaming the others, blaming the government, blaming God, blaming anything but ourselves. So the law of attraction is something very interesting. If you haven't gotten into that, just study it a little bit, take a look, and most importantly, examine it for yourself. You can see all these things if you open your eyes and you allow to take a close look how life works. There are laws behind everything. It's not a matter of coincidence. There is something. See, the physical world is governed by laws, and so is the ontological world, the world that governs the being, who we are with life. And the workplace is just part of life. So there are laws behind that, and it's interesting to study them, and that might be a different webinar. We are still in the level of aggression, and there also what we find is mobbing. So you will start, whether you like it or not, maybe spreading evil gossips. You make comments, or you don't make a comment, and that already tells a story. Not really in the team building energy anymore. You're rather acting on your internal state, which is aggression, if we are on that level. And revenge, I already mentioned, revenge, vengeance, that is also something that plays out here. And if we don't act there, you see, just for clarification, of course you are in action on the level of frustration and aggression, but it's a reaction. It's not a creation. And interesting, when you look at the word reaction, then you take the C out of the word and put it as a letter up front in the first spot, and then reaction becomes creation, right? And the C could stand for consciousness, for example. So action on the lower rungs of the ladder of power are reactions, and the reaction is something that happens without us being fully conscious. So we need to first become conscious that we are there. That's why I'm explaining it to you, so that it becomes like a red flag, that when you find yourself in complaint or in an expectation or in a frustration already, that you can identify it. And I show you in a moment then how to convert it into the upper parts. So on the bottom, you see that's where it all ends, resignation, giving up. And, it's like nothing makes a difference anymore. Nothing makes a difference anyway. Well, I've tried everything. Well, I just want to go home. Why should I care? It's them. So resignation is really, really a difficult state, because it's A, sad, and B, it is not who we really are. We are creative beings. We are wonderfully equipped throughout all of our life to create and to consistently engage with our environment in a constructive, positive way. So resignation is just a sign that we have disconnected from that core of who we really are. And it's very important to allow oneself to admit that one has resigned. That one has resigned with regard to that the company really can go to a particular level, or that your career could go to the maximum level what you can envision. And the older we get, the more chance there is with regard to a resignation, with regard to putting up with mediocrity or putting up with, yeah, well, that's how things are. And that's not who we're meant to be. We are shining, beautiful, powerful human beings. And when we identify where we are on the low rungs, then we have a choice. Now, one very important thing I want to share with you is that the moment you start being in expectation assumption, you inevitably spiral down. You don't have to do anything. It happens automatically, and it will happen. Nobody gets stuck on the level of expectation assumption. It always will become a complaint sooner or later. And that complaint also will become a frustration or an aggression. And that, at the end of the day, will become a resignation, a giving up. In our personal lives, with ourselves, in relationships of all kinds, and of course in the professional world. Anything what hasn't worked out in your life has started that you were in an expectation, an assumption, and you did not communicate, you did not take the required action, it became a complaint, it went through the frustration, aggression level, and then finally you dumped it, you gave up on it. I hope you can see that, so that you can see how powerful that really is. Now, is it possible to shift out of that? Absolutely. And the great news is it's non-sequential. That means you can shift from any of the lower levels, the red ones, into any of the blue levels immediately. And I'm going to show you then also with examples how that works. So let's first take a look at that. Expressing a wish would be the first upper rung. Yeah? So that means that when you are in an expectation and you identify it and it all makes sense what I'm saying, so you say, oh, wait a minute, before it goes into complaint and frustration and resignation and all the rest of it, let me take action now. Let me get out of this state of expectation and assumption. And let me go and do my creator action. So that means you can now express a wish. That is the first power level. That's a very soft level, and it's often just to inform in a very gentle way my environment, my superior, my subordinates, my team colleagues, etc., that I do have a wish. I have a wish that you finish this project on time exactly by 4 o'clock on Thursday. And I can also explain why, because I would like to take it on and finish it from my side by 6 o'clock, etc., etc. No, that's expressing a wish. That's taking action. So this, however, leaves the possibility that the other one is acting, the recipient is acting on it or not, right? So a request would be the next higher level of power. If you are expressing a request, then things are starting to happen. Because when you receive a request, it always involves a response from you. It always requires from you to say yes or no or maybe. If you request from your environment, then you involve them into taking responsibility for the response, as we just said. And I request a salary raise. Yeah? If you are expressing that to your superior, then it's more than I have the wish. You can see that. I request you get that done. I request you are participating in this project. So this is not really the language we are using in daily life. However, when I started to use the lead of power 25 or 30 years ago, a long time ago, and I used the word request, I got some looks, right? And I didn't mind, because everybody understands what the word is. You know, it's not like a weird word. It's just an unusual word. But the request is polite, and it means I really, really want something from you. That's why I love it so much. Request I use most of the time. Now, sometimes a request is also not enough with regard to getting things done and moving. Then You need to go one level up. Then it's a demand. Now, when you say I demand a salary review, then it could get across quite pushy. Of course, sure. However, probably you're not starting with a demand. Probably you have expressed a wish. Maybe you have made a request and it was not making a difference. Well, then, if it's appropriate in the environment, make a demand. Yeah, if it's important for you, what choices do you have if you don't make a demand? Well, you fall back into complaint, right? And therefore, you go further down, frustration, aggression, resignation, and you quit the job or you quit the relationship or whatever there is to be quit upon. So demand might sometimes be very, very important. And it's risky, yeah, because you show really up. You show up as somebody who is taking a stand for what's important to them, what's important to you. So you need to be aware of what your needs are. You know, we have wants and we have needs. A want is something, well, it's kind of a preference. If you don't get it, your world doesn't fall apart. And it's okay. It's not like you make a compromise. It's just a preference and it didn't happen. Okay, fine, no problem. If it's a need, then if you would compromise on that, something in you dies a little bit. And something in you is also very, very unhappy about you as a host of yourself, so to speak, have made a compromise. And this is not a good idea, you know, to do that. So you need to be able to say yes to your needs and to also admit that you have the need for yourself, then to stand up for it and express it. See, when you express a demand, the other still can say yes or no. By the way, that accounts for the request as well. No, you can say yes or no. If it's a no and you don't get the demand fulfilled on, well, then it's time to either go to command or to review, you know, whether this relationship or that environment is something you choose to belong to further. I come back to that in a moment. Let's go to command to complete the line here. Well, see, command is a very special level because normally the way we have a social conduct doesn't allow command. But for example, as parents, we are allowed to command our children when there is the need for it. If my child runs out on the street and the car comes, I command my child to stop or run back. Yeah? Or in any action nature team, you know, when we are out there in the mountains hiking, etc., and I'm the team leader, I'm responsible for people's lives. Of course, you know, I'm allowed, I have to command if there is a need for that. But I can't command my superior, and that's probably not what would get the desired result manifested. And so you see, that would be then the ultimate power up there. But most of the time, we don't have to go there, except in those situations I just explained. So when a demand or a request is denied, then you are needing to review, as I said, whether this team you work for, the company you belong to, the position you are in, the relationship you are in, etc., whether that is really something for you that serves your life purpose, that serves your vision, that serves who you really are. And of course, it shouldn't be a reaction like a spontaneous impulse and but it might be then worthwhile to take a look at that. Usually, a request is positively responded to. Yeah, so usually you receive a yes. And what happens now if you don't get or if the person who accepted the request is not doing what they said now they will do? If you say, I request you get that paper done by 4 o'clock on Thursday, and they on Thursday 4 o'clock do not deliver the paper to you, well, then you will need to hold them accountable for the promise they made, because a yes to a request is a promise. And we live in a culture where promises are also not really appreciated, sometimes even, or people do not often honor their promises, like really. They always then have reasons to explain why it couldn't be done, why it didn't work out, and then sometimes we even go into lying in order to get our, our reputation not damaged. So with promises and how to deal with that is a whole extra domain and area to deal with. But there is a possibility to also get that on a really powerful level. So this is now the ladder of power. So whenever you are in that red level, that means you are literally stuck. You are either passively waiting, and if you passively wait, usually you invite Murphy's Law to work. Murphy, you may have heard Murphy's Law, that if something bad can happen, it will. So there's something like that, what you put yourself at risk to when you are in the expectation level, or when you are on assumptions. By the way, you can clarify and transform anytime any assumption by asking the required question. You simply have to ask a question, and then you're not needing any longer to be on an assumption. So now, when you are now seeing the whole thing, you basically could theoretically clean up your whole life in all areas with regard to where you find yourself being a victim. And this has nothing to do what social status you're in, nothing to do with gender, nothing to do with any circumstances. It is an internal process. And how it then turns out externally is by your choice. You either go up expressing a wish or a request or a demand, or sometimes, as I said, even a command. So the good news is that you do not need to have any conditions in place in order to make the shift. At any time, you can go from red to blue at any time, and that's really powerful. I love that about the ladder of power. And you can basically use it in all areas of your life. And also from a personal growth dimension, you see, when you spend more and more time on the victor level, well, then you establish yourself as such. You become a successful person in all areas, and it just gets better and better and better, because the upspin is also developing its own momentum. So you are spiraling up, and you feel better about yourself, you feel better about your possibilities, and for your team as well, because only a tree that bears fruit can nurture. You also are really a contribution to the environment. I mean, see, on the lower levels, what happens is we contribute mischief in one form or the other. And when we are on the upper level, what we contribute is clarity and flow. And that's beautiful. And that is really something that is helping the possibility of what you are in, the possibility of your relationship, the possibility of your company, of your job, of your workplace, the possibility of your team. And whenever I got stuck in life, I immediately could find where I am on the ladder of power. And instead of waiting for my thoughts to become better or my emotions to shift, I saw that no, I can take responsibility now for the shift and choose what conversion action, what action on the blue level is it that I would need to be willing to commit to. It's a matter of commitment. So instead of being in a complaint with regard to my partner, I can now say, okay, this is what I need or want. and I can start with expressing a wish or straight going into request. But I took action. You know, the difference is because I'm taking action. And in this action, I already internally shifted by taking responsibility into the state of the victor. And how then the environment responds to is, well, that is what you need to see. But at least they also know what you need and what you want. You are not silently sitting on assumptions. And if they are not fulfilled, you're going to go into disappointment, and then you're going to start punishing your company or your partner for them not having given to you what you expected to become and to get. So this is really very, very powerful. So what you can do is you can immediately shift. Just take a look. Are you, theoretically only, are you able to request? Well, basically you have to say, yes, you are. That is simply done by doing so. And it might cause a little bit of resistance or fear. You know, fear is often the reason why we are finding ourselves rather being on the victim level, because we are too afraid to show up. Because when you are getting your head out of water, so to speak, you are finding yourself on the blue level. But showing up means also risking yourself. And sometimes that is scary. So what can happen when you request is, well, you are seen, you are heard, and you are telling the environment, okay, this is what I request, and then you get a response. And from there you dance. Either you go to demand or you go into action, but life starts to become an expression of your creation again, and you are stopping to be a victim of your reactions, and that's what it's basically all about, right? So soon I'm going to give you a chance to practice a little bit, to go a little bit into a exercise, and what we're going to have here, as you can see, is exercising the letter of power. Now, there's a table, and the first column is the column of reaction. So identifying where we find ourselves being in expectation or assumption. In the area of work, in the area of relationship, in the area of self. And I don't know if you have seen it, but you can download that as a PDF also from the webinar space, or later on you also can get it, no problem at all. So you can really use it as a worksheet for now, for later. And what you start is, first of all, identifying, where am I in assumption and reaction in my workplace. Okay, I see here, there. It could be subtle, but you can see there it is, just kind of a red flag. Same for complaint, then you're in complaint, work, relationship, self with yourself, it's also the letter of power. Acting on yourself is very important. And then aggression, frustration, where's that in your life? Because remember, if you don't do anything, you go down the next lower rung. I'm repeating that so often because we always think, this is that's kind of where it is, but no, it gets worse. It gets worse by itself. That's why it's important to know that and to get out of there, move and go up the ladder of power, and you see things are happening. So what you're going to do is you're going to simply write down the issue. You say what it is. And once you have identified that, you then take a look at, okay, what the conversion action. By conversion action, what I mean is simply which of the upper rungs, expressing a wish, requesting, demanding, or commanding, is it that you are choosing to select. And then the last one is simply, are you committing to do it? Are you committing to do it? And you should say yes, definitely. If you say no, then you may have very good reasons for it. But then, if that is the case, self-honesty granted, if that is the case, then you still are very highly advised to not pack that issue away again, but rather engage maybe a coach to work on particular personal internal things in order to get unstuck or get unwinded what there is, if something is in the way. Coaching is something that helps you to get out of the way what's in the way. Very simple. So this table here, when you put that into action, and how to do it, as I explained it in my own words now, is also on top of the table, as you can see. You have here identify one expectation, assumption in its area, then identify complaint, same for aggression, frustration, and resignation. And then you go through each issue, and then you select a conversion action, and at the end you congratulate yourself because you have regained a huge part of your potential power. So I would like now to give you a little bit of time for yourself to actually take this opportunity as you listen to this webinar and to start simply the work with identifying where you are at the lower ranks of the ladder of power. And it doesn't matter whether you start with expectations or assumptions or you just do it as you look at it as it comes up for you. We are all human beings. We all have stuff going on. I do not believe that anybody is having his life, her life in such a way that there's nothing on the lower ranks of the ladder of power. If so, then big congratulations, really big. But make sure that you are not in self-delusion. Make sure that you can be really honest to yourself. So my silence now is a conscious choice. It's not that I don't know what to say anymore. It's simply to giving you a little bit of silence and space so that you can put the ladder of power into practice right now. In a few minutes or so, the space also opens to questions. But before we go there, just take a look. And on this table, you can go forth and back and up and down. Yeah, just work with it as you have fun and as the flow goes. And then when you're in the column with the creation, victor, conversion part, and take a look. What would be the right power level to start with? You want to just put your big toe a little bit into the water, so to speak, and express a wish. Fine, no problem at all. But when it doesn't work out, when it doesn't make a difference, before you fall back into assumption that your wish gets fulfilled, you better then select a request, because then the recipient is demanded to respond. A wish can be, okay, thank you for expressing your wish, and with a response, they have to say something. And how would that look like? How would that look like? And the tip I want to give you here is use the phrase, I request. It has kind of a magic even in it. You have no idea how much of a difference I always make when I say I request. In in the tonality and the voice appropriate to the environment, of course. I need to speak different to my team or to my subordinates or superior, different energy level, but it's still, I request. And then some people are, not going to like me anymore. Because, suddenly I'm causing a little bit too much heat. Now they find themselves in the lower ranks of the ladder of power. They probably have not done the webinar. And then I come in and say, suddenly I request. So that's could be uncomfortable for them, a little bit inconvenient. They don't want to deal with, the issue of whether you receive a salary rise or not, or get a promotion or not. They rather would postpone it until next year. But now you come with a request. And if you really want to test it, then make the request with a deadline. No? I request by by next week that you get back to me on the matter of fill in the blank. I request that on the next weekend you make a plan so that we have an exciting day. Well, maybe you are afraid that they will divorce you when you say that. But hey, maybe not. But what choice do you have? I mean, if you don't, you expect that he or she will eventually also step in and get into initiative, take action for creating value in the relationship. If you don't request, what happens is down spiral on the lower rungs. Just take a look at that. And this doesn't help you, this doesn't help them, and it doesn't help the relationship. And that's true in the professional as in the personal realm. And if you really like what you hear here, then just make it a commitment with yourself, kind of a practice to rewire your brain. That every day, minimum one conversion action on the ladder of power. Every day, minimum one time you want to hear yourself loud saying to someone, I request. And when you do that for a while, it becomes familiar to you. Then you don't feel awkward anymore, and you get comfortable with it. And that, of course, also translates when you are interacting with others. If you feel awkward saying I request, well, then you are kind of provoking them also to feel awkward. But I was searching for years for a better word, and I'm always asking my participants in the seminars, do you know a better word for request? And no, there isn't. So I'm promoting a little bit with a great emphasis here the word request, but it is magic, because you can't say I demand. You can, but it's most of the time not appropriate or polite. And expressing a wish is too soft. So what can you do? You're stuck with I request, but that's a good one. And then, as I already said, the column, the last one on the right side, commit, question mark, well, tick. And if not, allow me to just say it, get a coach. Because the lower ranks will not disappear magically by themselves. They're going to hang in there, in you, until you are making the move from victim to victor. Life is just waiting for you to fully step into your power. just as a reminder, there is no need to wait a second longer and remain on the lower rungs, on the red levels. You can make now a decision that tonight or tomorrow morning, you're going to make that request. If you can trust when you make a promise to yourself that you're also going to go through with it, well, then you should immediately feel a shift in your energy. Because what's happening is on the lower rungs, energy gets blocked. These are kind of centers of cloaks. And the moment you are going through up the ladder of power, even with a decision that you're going to do it tomorrow morning, doesn't matter, you already made the shift. And then the water is flowing again. It's not water, it's life force, right? The life force is flowing again. And you're going to, sometimes rattle the cage a little bit. You're going to become a shaker and mover. Whether you're a woman or a man, doesn't matter. We all are here to express who we are. And if we don't, we leave others in the same illusion that we are a victim of our circumstances. And we are not. Of course, I'm not talking about becoming a master of the universe. That's vain and not possible. That's not what it is about here. It's simply within your power and your impact that is given to you by life to live and act as a creator. Not the creator, a creator, a victor. Okay, I just see that the time has come for questions. That's great.
Thank you, Mr. Marc. So, folks, we are open for the question and answer. You can either put your question in the chat box or you can raise the hand icon available on your webinar console. So let me go ahead straight to the very first question and we have Caroline. Caroline, are you there? I'm unmuting you so you can ask the question from Mr. Marc directly. Hello, Caroline. I think so she's unavailable right now. So Mr. Marc, let me go to another question, and that is, what if my work colleagues accept the request but don't work on it?
Well, if that happens, you need to hold them accountable. And if you make a request and they don't act on it, and you have a good relationship to them, what you always can do is, hey, remember I requested yesterday? And put a timeline on it, either in the immediate request when you make it or in the second request. Say, hey, allow me to ask you to get that done by 6 o'clock tonight. And so when you put a time on that and they don't fulfill on it, well, what you're dealing then with is the matter of integrity, the power of promises, the power of word. And as I said, that would be a webinar in its own kind around that. But holding them accountable, put a timeline on it. Then the chances of fulfillment are much bigger.
Thank you, Mr. Marc. We have another from Natalie, and the question is, where do you place a blackmail in the ladder of power? Example, if you do something, I'll do something. I feel it's a negative action, but still it is an action and a sort of taking responsibility for the final result.
I have to laugh here a little bit. Blackmail. Not recommended. Not recommended. So our tendency to get even when we don't get what we want is, of course, a reaction that comes from our personality, our conditioning. And it's very close to what I said, when one doesn't have power, one uses force. So what you can expect is to be surprised when you are expressing requests, and these requests are really connected to your energy. So when it's important to you, when it's part of who you are, you can expect to be surprised by how much suddenly things are starting to move. And I believe there's never a need for blackmailing. I believe it's a good opportunity if you find yourself thinking about blackmailing. Maybe you are assuming that you're not going to get what you need, that they're not going to do it. That's an assumption. Convert it into a question. When you say, I request X, and then you immediately say, okay, thank you for accepting my request, and can I count on you doing it? Okay, yes, great. Then I get back to you tomorrow by 4 o'clock. Yeah, now, so when they don't do it and then punish them with blackmailing, not a good idea. You can live your life differently. Yeah? So blackmailing is only when you don't trust your power, or when you don't know how to deal with people and them not doing what they said they will do. A promise is something that a person says they're going to do something at a particular time, and when they don't do it, then you need to engage them into a integrity repair. You said you're going to do it, you didn't, so what are we going to do now? And how is it going to look next time when you promise something? Must I expect now that you are doing it or not? So, yeah, when you become a person like that, and you sometimes may lose a couple of friends, but they never were friends in the first place, by the way. But you become someone who holds people accountable, and you know why people don't do that? Because they don't want to be held accountable themselves. So if you don't hold people accountable, what's going to happen? They don't hold you accountable, and everybody can remain conveniently in their particular level of victimhood. That's not effective, that's not powerful, and it's not fun either. So start showing up and holding people accountable, and practice not to be attached. Yeah? That means make your requests, make your demands, and try to practice.
Hello, Mr. Mark, are you there? We seem to lost your audio. Hello, Mr. Mark. I think so. We seem to have lost Mr. Mark audio. He's online, but I cannot hear him. Mr. Mark, are you there? Attendees, can you hear me? Can you hear my voice? So that means we are having a technical glitch from Mr. Mark's side, and I'm really sorry it is happening. I'm trying to contact him. Just please stay on hold. Hopefully we can get him back. Dear attendees, please stay on hold. We are having a technical difficulty from Mr. Mark's side, and he's online, but we cannot seem to hear him. I'm trying to contact him, but he hasn't replied till yet. So please stay on hold. If we don't hear from him, we'll have to end this webinar. But till then, please stay on hold. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you. Hello, Mr. Mark. Are you there?
Yes, we had a power failure for a second and that switched off the router, so I'm very sorry. But I'm back now.
Okay, so we can continue with the session. Should I ask another question from you? So we are piling up with all the questions here.
Yes.
Okay. We have...
Shoot.
Okay. The other question is that, can you command your subconsciousness to let go of obsessive thoughts, or should you, for example, request pray for peace of mind?
Beautiful question. It depends on how powerful you are with your relationship to yourself, how powerful your word is. When you command, there shall be light. When you command, there shall be peace. Then it's a matter of how powerful is your word. When you say something, does that have power? Are you a person that acts on their word? When you say 9 o'clock, are you showing up at 9 o'clock, not at 9:01? When you say, I'm going to come back to you tomorrow, are you going to do that? Are you living your life where your actions and your promises are one movement, not separate? Are you leaving things to chances, or are you really, really making it a matter of high importance to be in alignment with your word? When your word is that powerful, and my work is based on the power of the word, all the seminars, everything I created is based on that power, which is a slightly different theme, of course. But when you have that power, yes, you have also the power to command your subconscious. It is possible. And when you go to the level of the unconscious, that's the soul level, well, that's a little bit different. You can't command the soul, because the soul is not on that level where it can be accessed via commands. We only can cooperate and align with our soul's purpose and our soul's life in itself. And that's, again, a whole different story. So I hope I can answer the question by saying, yes, by the power of the word, you can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. We have another one, and it is, when you make a request with the right energy, are you also communicating with the other person's higher self?
Well, usually the requests are on the level of interacting with life and how life works, so everyday issues, etc. Psychological requests, I request you love me. I wouldn't suggest to do that. But on the functionality of life, of everyday concerns, it should not involve the higher self of the other. It's basically just down to earth. You guys have come together, you have a project together, you have a vision together, you have promises, you made a plan, you create something, and within that, there's plenty of room for interaction, requests, and all the rest of it. The higher self is a level that is to be seen in that higher self context, which is very complex and expands by far today's webinar space.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. We have another one, and it is, I request something and my team acts on it and takes it to completion. However, the minute I'm on holidays, they continue to do their job without taking responsibility. Just because I'm not there, they seem not to care anymore.
I know that one myself, and I think every leader probably in one way or the other is knowing this one. The teacher's out of the class and the students are dumping everything and nobody is doing their homework, etc., etc. So, what you're going to do? Very simple, right? Very simple. before the next time you go on a holiday or on a long weekend or whatever, you make the request that they this time are going to do what has been agreed upon. And if they don't, then they broke a promise. See, if we leave it to expectations and assumptions that they will, we're going to set ourselves up for a disaster because we can't hold them accountable because they didn't make it a promise, and so on and so forth. Then the whole discussion level comes. But if they promise, yes, we will, and they don't, then you say, okay, so now we need to go to the level of discussing when you make a promise, can I count on you or not? This can literally take your whole cultural climate to the next level. Then your company needs to shift to function on promises and not assumptions. And that could be the breakthrough of your life, the breakthrough for your company to the next level. Yeah? It's a whole different ballgame. So you need to decide what game you want to play. Do you want to set yourself up for the rest of your life, like hoping and assuming and expecting and consistently being disappointed? Or are you going to play a little bit of a different game, become a person who is themselves walking the talk? You are doing what you said you will do, and you hold others accountable to do the same. And you give them the choice, either we play it this way or we don't play it at all. Sometimes straightness can be very attractive, and sometimes it also creates the required breakthrough. It's just a matter of you making a commitment to go beyond your fear and to gonna do it.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. Another question from Mr. Wasim, and the question is, you use the metaphor of the ladder. We want, of course, be as long as possible in the stage of creation. Does this ladder of power has an end?
I don't think so, if I look at the question. I'm not quite sure if I really 100% get what the questioner is asking, but maybe my response shows it. For me, the ladder of power is accompanying our natural flow of evolution. So everyone as a person and as a family and as a company is in a continuous evolution. And on every new level that we accomplish, that we arrive at, a new set of challenges is awaiting us. And that new set of challenges requires, again, interaction, where then again the ladder of power just on the next level is needed and available. And once we master that level, guess what? We're going to get levitated to the next level. I don't personally see an end. No, I don't.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. Another one, and this is actually, it's a situation, but a question as well. And it's a very long one. I can't stand being in the presence of my father. He irritates me. I make him guilty for many things and I can't forgive him. I did the forgiving thing in Master 2 and 3 and I got better, but there are still reminiscences. I also know that all this is a story of my mind. So I'd like to be able to let go of this and just accept him for who he is, because I know he's not going to change. What do I need to do, since I know that this is only my deal and only I can change the way I feel about this situation?
Well, the questioner is already in a very good position saying, I know I have to act on that. It's not for me now to wait whether my father is changing or not. So that's already a good power position. To accept would be the first prize, accept as an authentic state, not a phony state where we try by Pollyanna to just positive thinking on top of all our issues with our parents. There might be a lot required to arrive at the state where I do have the power to really accept. And this might be a very important part in one's spiritual journey. It could be a matter of months, it could be a matter of years, it could be a matter of decades. It depends on how important that is for you. It depends on what engagement you bring to the party, whether you are going into self-improvement work and you do all kind of things that may educate you or help you to grow into that state of a level of, I want to call it unconditional love, where the conditions your dad provides for you are not any longer a reason to not love him. You know, just take the examples of the religious leaders in this world, from Buddha to Muhammad to Jesus, etc. They were all examples that showed us that conditions did not stop them to express love and to have love, which is just another word for acceptance. And so continue working on yourself, continue believing that it is possible, and your dad only represents attributes. See, it's not the person that you can't stand. It's something they represent that you can't stand. I say that every child loves their parents unconditionally. What we have troubles with is attributes. And these attributes, funny enough, or dramatically enough, are attributes we can't deal and don't want to see in ourselves. So if I have a problem with anything in my mom or my dad, it is always something I have a problem in myself. And I have not resolved it in myself. The moment I can be and have resolved my own vanity, any vain person cannot trigger me anymore. I can love them and I can come from creation and not reaction. But if I can't stand my own vanity, or if I cannot admit that I'm vain, well, then every vanity in another person is triggering me, and then I go into the self-delusion and, all the rest of it. So continue your self-development work. Maybe work on your shadows, find out what is really going on. What does your dad represent as attributes that get you into the condition of and once you have found and shed light in yourself on all of that, it's then a natural outcome that you can truly fall back into loving your dad as you did as a child.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. We are going to the next question. And it is, say I've used all of the conversions actions at the top part of the ladder and I've had no success. Does it then mean that I have to decide for myself if I want to still be part of the situation? For example, the relationship, team of company.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it means. If it hasn't made a difference, then you need to review really, is that what you are in that team, in that company, is that really your way? Is that where your soul wants to be? If we want to bring that in, is that where, you see, when doors get closed, my personal philosophy is when a door gets closed and when a door doesn't open, no matter how much I use a lot of power, then I believe maybe there's a reason for it. A reason as in that God, whatever that means for you, wants me to use another door, not this one. Further down the corridor of life, there are doors that are open. And my soul knows best what's good for me, but I don't. So if I get too much resistance, if after repeated requests and demands nothing works, I start considering that this is an avenue, this is a door my soul doesn't want me to take. And then granting my soul the benefit of the doubt, so to speak. I say, okay, I'm not going to go there now, and I'm going to accept it, it's closed. So let me see what doors await me that are open and inviting. And so many times when people dared to accept, okay, this is not the door for me, I'm going to just travel on and look and be open for another door, that's a time when they look back later and say, that was the moment where my life took a turn. That was the moment where my life changed. It was scary. I didn't have a guarantee. There was no divine insurance policy telling me you're going to be well. I had to take the risk. I had to face the insecurity. And what happened was a miracle. So, yeah. And the Dakota Indians, they also have a saying, if your horse is dead, exactly, get off it.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. We are running short of time, folks, so I'll be asking one last question before we end this session. And the question is, how can I use the power of letter to encourage my kids for choosing to create the best life for them? They are now at the age they want to play computer games, and their mom only wants stupid, boring stuff.
Good question. It's a theme for many parents nowadays. And every parent, of course, wants the best life for their children. Absolutely. I'm not quite sure if the letter of power here is the right instrument to start with. It's certainly a great instrument to interact with children as well, absolutely, in all areas. But here to find or to provide for one's children an environment where they can go on a journey, making their essence become conscious to them. As adults later, we need to find our essence again because we have disconnected from it through the way of our society works and our upbringing. Rarely a human being has an education in childhood and at school that doesn't disconnect them from their essence. Rarely. So as children, we still are in the essence, but it's not conscious to us. So what can I do as a parent to provide for my child a environment where they can make their essence become conscious? And this is also a theme that goes far beyond our space today here in the webinar. I'm happy to engage in that further. If you contact me, we need maybe to talk a little bit more in depth about that, because I need to know then particulars of the existing relationship, the environment, etc., etc. So forgive me to not being able to have a clear yes/no answer or a tip here. The theme is very precious. It's so important for children to have parents that are a little bit more conscious than the normal state, or even maybe hopefully fully conscious, and to know how to provide a conscious parenting. This is one of my big passion personally in life, that parents are waking up. They need to get a driver's license for parenting. You know, they just can't leave it to chances. It's so important. And of course, it all starts with them. So when they are on a personal path of awakening, yes, then naturally the children are benefiting for that. And there is a particular way to provide for children an environment that helps them. And as I said, I'm afraid it will go far beyond our space today.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. Folks, this really brings us towards the end of the webinar. I know we still have a few more questions, but we request that you may reach directly Mr. Mark on his email address. Mr. Mark, I'd request if you share the slide which has your contact details.
Oh, sorry. Yes. I have to just go there. Coming up. Here we no, one more time.
One more
Here
slide.
we go.
Yes.
Got a little, yes.
So folks, you can reach him directly on the details shared on the screen. And Mr. Mark, thank you very much for a very wonderful and a very interesting presentation. But before we end, any concluding remarks from your side before we dismiss the session?
From my side, I thank everyone who had the endurance to hang in there through all the time, and I just wish for you that you see the value and you see the validity of the letter of power. It's not my instrument, it's a human instrument. It's that what we need to do in order to not allow ourselves to fall into a victim state. We are not meant to be victims, we are meant to be victors. And when we all cooperate together as victors, we can create a powerful, wonderful world. And that's what's needed on the individual level, on the professional level, and of course on the bigger social level as well. So use it and create your life. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mark. Once again, I really want to thank you on behalf of Gulf Business Network and Training Center for your valuable time and sharing valuable information with us. And thank you all of those who have attended this webinar. We are recording this webinar and it will be uploaded on our website. So please stay tuned to webinar.gbntc.com for updates or for downloading the soft copy of this presentation in case you have missed it. With that, I'd like to end the webinar and you all will be automatically dismissed. Thank you very much and you all have a good day. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mr. Mark.
Thank you, Mrs. Sita. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.